I'm having a hard time keeping up with your career, Andy, but it sounds like On3 is definitely but your home base, but it's not all you're doing, right?
Yeah, we were adding a show. Well, On3 and Yahoo are partnering up, and so I'm doing a show with Yahoo. I am joining Ross Dellinger and Stephen Godfrey. This is the College Football Inquirer is the name of the show, and it is the show that Dan Wetzel and Pat Forty and Ross Dellinger were doing.
Right.
Dan has gone on to ESPN, and so he can't do it. And Ross is Ross is staying at Yahoo. Pat is now exclusive to SI. So me and Steven coming in, and we're gonna have some fun. It'll be a lot of fun.
We've had Ross on a couple of times. In terms of information, I don't know if anybody does a better job than him. And Wetzel was great too. I loved listening to those guys when they were all together.
Great lineup. Tremendous.
Super. I know you're on limited time. I know you're, big time. You got Dan Patrick. We don't want to upset Fritzy and Paulie and the gang there and have you tardy. Let me get started. This is something you're actually involved in. I haven't seen it yet. It's on the old Netflix, so I'll get to it. But On Any Given Saturday, we've heard nothing but great reviews from our audience and people that have enjoyed it. And I know you're kind of splattered there with some sound bites and whatnot. Give us your take and your involvement in that.
Well, so they let me know, hey, would you come talk about SEC football for a little bit? And so I did 3 different shoots, and basically they just kind of took me through, okay, here's the games we're focusing on, and here are the people, the coaches, the players we're focusing on, and had no idea what they were going to wind up using. And, I watched a lot of pop-up videos as a young person. I can't say as a kid because I think I was in my 20s, but I always wanted to be one of those people who popped up to talk about the video. So that's me now on that Netflix show. And it was a lot of fun. And it's, it's interesting because you don't realize the reach of Netflix until a show hits Netflix, and people that you haven't talked to in 20 years are like, oh my God, you're like, yeah, I talk about college football a little bit, but
kind of what you do
when it's on Netflix. That's everybody. That's not just our little college football world here.
And you mentioned, I think I caught you on Feinbaum the other day, that unlike a lot of these docs, and this is the problem I have, is that not to sound like an elitist, but I feel like if it's a college football doc, am I going to learn anything? Because I kind of know a lot of stuff. But you mentioned on this one in particular, you'll actually take some new info in.
Yeah, you learn a lot because, I was involved in the show, knew exactly what players and coaches they were going to be talking about, obviously watched all those games. And then when I watched the episodes when they were finished, I still learned a ton. I learned a lot about LSU, about Florida, about South Carolina, about Vanderbilt. And it was... I think that's the key there, because can you serve the general audience? Because obviously it's Netflix. There's so many people who don't follow college football, and that's what they want. This is the same production company, Box to Box, that makes the F1 Drive to Survive show, which there's a lot of people who don't actually watch F1 races who watch that show because it's a very well done show. And I think the hope is that with Box to Box, and I'm sure the SEC signed on because of this, and the schools signed on because of this, that it does help them reach a wider audience. But the thing is, you still have to be able to satisfy the hardcore group. And if you don't tell them anything new, then they don't want to see it. And I think those hour-long documentaries, the Johnny Manziel one, the one about the Urban Meyer Gators, the Connor Stallions one, they don't have enough time. There's not enough runtime to go deep. So the people who know, like, if you follow the Connor Stallions stuff even casually as a college football fan, they didn't tell you anything interesting. Now, his NCAA interview video was interesting, but that was about it. But and the Johnny Manziel stuff, like if you were watching all those games and watching as that went, is like you didn't learn anything. So I love the fact that go deeper. You get entire episodes that are devoted to one or two teams that kind of show exactly what's going on. And like you guys are a very South Carolina centric audience. South Carolina gave them a ton of access, and South Carolina gets a lot of screen time. A lot. You learn on a whole lot about Shane Beamer, about Lenora Sellers. And I think you kind of follow. They're the one team I think I feel like over the course of the show, you follow through the whole season. Them and LSU, which obviously it starts with that LSU game, which the South Carolina folks don't really want to remember
Yeah, yeah. And we've got a lot of SEC fans that tune in. I know they did a really good job with, like you said, LSU and Florida and other teams too. So
yeah, and if you're mad your team wasn't in it,
that's
call your AD and your coach.
Yeah.
Because they're the ones at fault. So Georgia, Oklahoma, Texas, Alabama, Ole Miss, like your people said no. That's why you're not in it.
You notice the common trend in most of those have ties to Saban one way or another. Either through coach or the current coach at Alabama have ties. And Nick Saban would never have agreed to sign off on this. And
in at least one case, there was supposed to be a show that the school was producing and it never got off the ground. But that wasn't the case at all of them. Some of them were just like, we don't want the distraction.
Yeah, they don't want. I mean, I understand that coaches are paranoid and they're always somewhat myopic in their viewpoint during the year. In an era where this time of year hot takes are floating all around, you're not a hot take artist, and I give you credit for that. But give me your hottest take of the upcoming season, something that you receive the most flack or criticism over thus far.
I mean, I get criticism every time I say if DJ Lagway is healthy, Florida can be a playoff team. They don't, people who watched them last year just don't want to accept that if they're the team they were at the end of the season, that they can play with anybody in their schedule. But obviously the DJ Lagway being healthy part of it's a big deal. And I had Florida fans pushing back because I said that on Feinbaum yesterday that, hey, if he's healthy, they're a playoff team. If he's not healthy, they get everybody fired. And they're like, I had one guy say, well, when you have a top 5 O-line, top 5 D-line, and you're going to have a top 3 running game, how does it matter what your quarterback? I'm like, okay, did you see Aiden Warner start the Texas game last year? This is the same people on the offensive and defensive lines. Like, that's the difference. So,
it's his most talented team, right? It's Billy's most talented team.
It is Billy's most talented team, but it's interesting that they've made some of the people have made some serious cognitive leaps that don't need to be made. Like, we don't know they're going to be a top 3 runner. Like, they're not going to suddenly turn into 2000 Wisconsin. Like, they should be able to run the ball fairly well. I don't think they're going to run through Georgia and Texas A&M. Those are not teams typically that you can just hand the ball off and you're good to go. And so that's the thing. If they had a normal, like an average power conference schedule, I wouldn't say all this stuff about the DJ Lagway injury history. I'd be like, yeah, they're going to win 8 or 9 games at least. But they don't have an average power conference schedule. They have a very difficult one.
They're loaded with young talent, too. I mean, this is not going to be a one-time thing for them. Florida.
I don't think so. But the thing is, if they go 6-6, there's going to be a new coach, and those players are going to leave. So
that's a good point, man. That's they're very intriguing though, because Billy likes to run the ball, and like so you're playing Miami. They're playing Miami.
Mm-hmm.
Miami isn't exactly the most physical bunch up front. I could see
Miami's extremely physical up front. I don't know if you've ever watched them play. Their offensive line is excellent. They destroyed Florida up front last year. So
last year. I'm just saying sometimes Miami will get. I could see.
No, Miami's offensive line's awesome. Like, they have 5 NFL players in their offensive line.
Defensive line. Miami's defense.
Ruben Bain, Keem Messidor, they're really good.
I just, I think a physical team like Florida could go in there and run.
Well, again, that's a hard one because Miami physically dominated them up front last year. Mm-hmm. So that's one of those they've got to prove that they are different. And they were different, like, as the season went on, because what they look like against Miami and A&M is nothing. It looked nothing like what they look like against Ole Miss and LSU. And like, Ole Miss had probably the best D-line in the country last year. And it's not like Florida was running rampant over Ole Miss, but it's funny because if you look at the per carry average, it looks bad in the Florida Ole Miss game, but then you realize that's the best anybody did against Ole Miss all season. So that's saying something.
Yeah, same thing with Miami. Miami went to Georgia Tech and Haynes King couldn't even throw the ball, and they just got gashed. It was the teams changed. So that's I just Jaden Ball and that offensive line going down there in a revenge game.
Jaden Ball is going to be fun.
Jaden
Ball is going to be fun.
Yeah, I like that guy a lot.
He is enormous, and that's one of those things that, like, when you have Jaden Ball and again a healthy DJ Lagway who's also a threat to run the ball, you feel really good on the goal line, which I think Florida just has not had that element in a while where you felt like if they're in the red zone, they're going to be able to punch this in. And I think that's a pretty comforting thing for them. This is the most optimism I remember for a Florida season, because the 2020 season, I think everybody thought they were going to be pretty good, but that was such a weird deal because of the pandemic, and are they even going to play football? So non-pandemic years, I think this is as excited as anybody's been in Gainesville since like 2009.
They're pretty excited in Austin too. The focal point from the national media is going to be on Arch Manning, but I don't even know if he has to be that good for them to have another really good year, because they're loaded everywhere. So what is your expectation there?
I mean, I have them number one in the country. I think they can win the national title. Okay. They do bring back so much. The offensive line's the question, because they obviously lost some very good offensive linemen. Kelvin Banks was a first-round draft pick, but you look at Trevor Gooseby, who had to come in when Kelvin Banks was hurt last year. He wasn't officially a starter, but we've seen him start in enough relevant games that we know he's going to be pretty good. And he's already getting buzz as a potential high draft pick for next year. So the fact that they didn't jump in the portal to replenish the offensive line should tell you how confident they are in the guys they recruited and developed. And I think that's the biggest difference under Sark versus the Tom Herman era and the Charlie Strong era, is Texas always got these very high profile recruits, but for whatever reason, they were not turning them into NFL players during their time in Austin. That has changed completely under Sark. Now the factory's open again, and they just, like you said, they're loaded. I mean, Colin Simmons, Anthony Hill, Michael Taff, that's three levels of that defense where those are players that you feel great about. And like, I don't know that we saw anywhere near what Ryan Wingo can be, the receiver who was a freshman last year. I think he's going to be a lot of fun. And, Arch is an interesting one, because I think the casual fan sees the name Manning and assumes he's going to play like Peyton or Eli. Mm-mm. This Arch is more of a dual threat guy. Like, there's a reason Arch was brought in to be the running QB when Quinn Ewers' ankle was messed up last year. So I think the athleticism of Arch changes the math on how you have to defend that offense, because with Quinn, you weren't that worried about that.
Without knowing your poll or the ballot that you filled out, I don't know the answer to this, which is good. So I'm going to ask the question.
I can tell you.
Well, you'll tip your hand when I ask this question about Penn State. Is this the year they finally get over the top? Franklin wins enough big games. It's not as if they were terrible last year. Nobody's hating on James Franklin. He's won a lot of games. You can't argue with the winning percentage. But the Happy Valley Nation expects a little bit more. Is this the team to do it?
I think so. And we were talking about this on my show yesterday. And, Ari Wasserman made a really good point, my co-host. No, they don't historically win those games against the superpower teams. And this year they play Oregon and Ohio State. Those are the two that we would consider of that ilk. It used to be they would have to play Ohio State and Michigan in the Big Ten East. Now it's whatever the Big Ten throws at them. This one is Oregon coming to them going to Ohio State. Most of those times, Penn State has been the less talented team in those games. This time, they're probably going to be the more talented team. Maybe not against Ohio State, but probably against Oregon right now. Oregon's going to continue to be one of the more talented teams in the country. But Penn State, I think if you go just down the roster, Penn State is a top 5 roster. So the talent is comparable now. There's not this giant gap between them and Ohio State in terms of talent. Like, now's when you say, okay, the talent's fairly equal. You need to win these games, James Franklin. And, theoretically, they could lose to Oregon and Ohio State, still make the playoff. But I actually think they probably need to beat one of those teams, because they play at Iowa. They also play Indiana. Those are losable games. So I think you'd probably want to win one of Oregon or Ohio State. So you got that mulligan there, because I do think it's a little bit trickier than some of the Penn State schedules of old, where it was just, what did you do against Michigan and Ohio State?
Yeah, and they need Drew Allar to play like a first-round draft pick in those games. Last one for you before we let you hop on to another show. Sleeper teams, some teams under the radar that you like this year.
The guy, the one I love, and I think a lot of people are coming around on them as we get closer to the season, is Utah. I really am excited to see Devin Dampier in that offense. You know, you have 2 NFL offensive tackles, and Spencer Fano, the right tackle, is probably the first tackle off the board in the draft if they had the draft tomorrow. And I think it's not going to change much during the season. Let's put it that way. He's pretty locked in as one of the top offensive tackles in the draft next year, and he's just an absolute mauler. But Caleb Loma on the left side is really good too. So this is an offensive line that we're not used to seeing this level of athlete on the offensive line in the Big 12. And I think a lot of it is Utah was made, you know, when you recruit these guys, because these offensive linemen, you started recruiting 4 and 5 years ago. You were in the Pac-12. You had to win a Pac-12 that included Oregon and Washington and USC. And so you were recruiting that level of trench talent, which you can do in Utah because a lot of it lives nearby. And so Kyle Whittingham's done a really good job of just stocking the trenches. So I think Utah is going to be a dangerous team in the Big 12. Devin Dampier is the new quarterback. He comes from New Mexico, ran for 1,100 yards last year. He's not the greatest thrower in the world. I don't think anybody's pretending that he is, but I think SEC fans will remember Nick Marshall at Auburn, who played corner in the NFL, but took Auburn to the national title game as a quarterback because he was such a threat with his legs. When he threw to Sammy Coates or whoever it was, they were wide open. So that's, I think, what Utah is hoping to do this year.
Yeah, I would expect with Whittingham, it's such a consistently good coach. That's a one-off. There's no way he has back-to-back disaster.
Yeah, and it was all bad quarterback luck. It stemmed from the various Cam Rising injuries through the years. And when Cam Rising got hurt last year, that was just they just were not in a position at quarterback, and him stretching out his career had sort of changed the timing of the recruitment of quarterbacks. So that's where it was. This is more of a hard reset for them, and I think they're back to winning a lot.
Should be fun. We inch closer and closer. Are you going to be anywhere for like week 0, week 1? Are you?
We are currently discussing the week 1 plan. I think right now the plan is LSU Clemson, which nice. I'm very, very excited about.
Very cool. Very cool. Andy, always appreciate the time. Go crush it on DP, and we'll talk to you soon.
Appreciate it, guys. Thank you.